Welcome to the English edition of Around the Globe. The election victory of the Conservatives in Britain under the current Prime Minister Boris Johnson is crushingly one-sided. Since the days of Margaret Thatcher, the Joan of Arc of conservatism, majority for Boris Johnson marks the largest margin for the Conservatives. Johnson's the Prime Minister who faces the possibility of being one of the shortest serving Prime Ministers in UK is now all powerful. Now it is very certain that Britain will leave the European Union by January 31st, 2020. It was also a devastating defeat for Jeremy Corbyn, the left-leaning Labour leader who has since resigned. Many of the cities in northern England that usually supported Labour has voted this time for the Conservatives. Large-scale anti-Corbyn propaganda unleashed and financed by the Zionist lobby and the rightist media might have helped Johnson win many Labour seats. Corbyn's pro-Palestine policy and socialist economic plans have been anathema to the rightist and pro-Zionist Jewish groups. There has been massive blue-collar realignment in favor of Conservatives. It is sometimes described as Trumpification of British politics. Now Britain has no option but leave European Union. There is great uncertainty about the terms of agreement Johnson could snatch from European Union. EU is very reluctant to accommodate Britain as it is a non-member now. Johnson will have to agree to a number of politically unpalatable decisions for Britain. Aung San Suu Kyi, the once celebrated champion of democracy in Myanmar, her homeland, is in the dock at International Court of Justice, the UN body dealing with war crimes and crimes against humanity. This is the first international legal effort to bring Myanmar to justice over alleged mass killings of Rohingya Muslims in 2017. It comes after Gambia, the small African country, filed an application at International Court of Justice accusing Myanmar committing crimes punishable under the terms of 1948 Genocide Convention. This is the first legal effort to bring Myanmar to justice over mass killings of Rohingyas. Suu Kyi, thought to be the unofficial Prime Minister of the country, came to The Hague to defend national interests, according to her office. That is exactly the language used by rightist autocrats to justify suppression of human rights and democracy in their countries. Myanmar is known to have carried out systematic, violent and sexual abuse against thousands of Rohingyas to drive them away from their homeland in Rakhine State, formerly known as Arakan. Suu Kyi was criticized for being a silent observer of the crimes committed by the army, which is predominantly Burmese. Suu Kyi incidentally also belongs to that dominant race in Myanmar. Myanmar incidentally is facing 3 separate judicial actions related to genocide and other human rights abuses against Rohingya Muslims. On 14th November, the International Criminal Court opened an investigation for the crimes committed by the Burmese army against Rohingyas in Bangladesh. Myanmar is not a member of International Criminal Court, so International Criminal Court may not have jurisdiction, but Bangladesh is a member. Also on November 4th, some of the human rights groups and human rights tribunal in Argentina sought to sue Suu Kyi and other top military officials for the same crimes under the principle of universal jurisdiction. But the abuse of Rohingyas is still continuing in many parts of Myanmar. It is believed that the Myanmar army has killed more than 20,000 people recently in the areas where Rohingyas live. A puppet again in the Algerian presidential palace. That is how Algerians responded to the election of Abdelmajid Tebboune as the president of the country. Tebboune claimed to have won 58% of the votes. Voter turnout was around 40%. Thousands of people gathered on the streets and squares of Algiers, the capital city, to protest the election because they think that Tebboune will not be able to drive away the old guards, which is called pauvre in French language. Pauvre is a powerful military, bureaucratic, political caucus in Algeria. It has tried all these years to destroy democracy in the country. Abdul Aziz Abu Teflika, the senile president, was forced to resign in April this year following mass protests. Protesters took to the streets when the regime announced the election this December. They raised slogans against Lieutenant General Mohammed Qaid Salah, the army chief, who is known to be the real power center. The demonstrators wanted to remove all members of the old guard, including the interim president Bin Salih. The regime arrested several high-profile activists, politicians, human rights leaders, opposed to the regime prior to voting. During his 4 decades-long political career, Tebboune has been very close to the military. This election comes at a crucial time for Algeria, which has been rocked by 9 months of nationwide protests. At first against Bouteflika's plans to extend his dismal 20-year-old rule and seeking the sweeping away of all remnants of the old regime. A new study by 89 scientists says that the rise in global sea level may be higher than what is previously projected. Greenland's ice sheet total losses come to an average of 254 billion tons. The study is published by The Nature, the renowned science journal. This puts another 6 million people at the risk of seasonal floods and heavy unexpected rains. It is now known that 1 centimeter of sea level rise brings another 6 million people to big environmental risk. The recent big losses in permafrost in Greenland, the experts suggest, is much more dangerous than the sea level projection outlined by UN climate body Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. In places like Alaska, the coastline is disappearing at 30 football fields per year. Melting of ice in Antarctica and small glaciers around the world would add to the rising sea level, which is going to be extraordinarily eventful for the coming generations. Thank you for watching the English edition of Around the Globe. Bye.